Yangmingshan is known as a beautiful place. However, Yangmingshan at night is a completely different place, with Balaka Highway and Yongjin Highway, Yongjin Gonglu, listed among Taiwan's top 10 eerie roads. Along Yongjin Highway, specifically within a small mountain path, lies one such secluded spot, the Bayanyeshi Hot Spring. This story is about a woman who planned to take her foreign friends to Yangmingshan. To avoid any issues, she decided to scout the path herself beforehand. However, by the time she reached Yangmingshan, it was already approaching evening, and the mountains grow dark early. She walked alone along the small path. After some time, she reached a fork in the road where she saw an old man standing under a tree. Feeling as though she had found a savior, she enthusiastically greeted him and asked for directions to Bayanyeshi Hot Spring. The old man, without speaking, simply raised his hand and slowly pointed to the left fork. The path he indicated was a small, overgrown trail filled with weeds. When the woman turned back to thank him, the old man had vanished without a trace. It was late, so she continued on undeterred. After walking for over an hour, the woman stopped. The scenery remained unchanged, nothing but forest after forest, accompanied only by the rustling of the wind. The entire atmosphere made her feel uneasy. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, she continued walking in the dark forest. She pondered why the old man would be standing alone in such a place. She tried to recall his appearance but only remembered that he wore a bamboo hat and a black cloak, with no memory of his face. She tried to remain calm, but after an unknown amount of time, she found herself back on the main road. On the deserted road, the flickering yellow streetlights, an extremely thick fog made her heart sink once more. Everything felt helpless. She walked, then ran faster and faster along the road. Suddenly, a light source in the distance caught her attention. She rushed towards it and found patrolling police officers. She finally relaxed, releasing the tension she had felt for so long. The police asked if she needed help and why she was alone. She explained that she was trying to reach Bayanyeshi Hot Spring but got lost. The police then informed her that to reach Bayanyeshi Hot Spring, she should have turned right at the fork, not left. They added that she had somehow ended up back on Yongjin Highway. The woman checked the time and realized she had been walking for nearly 3 hours, yet she was back on Yongjin Highway, less than 10 minutes from where she started. Recalling all the strange events, she grew more and more unnerved. The area was full of desolate, overgrown land with hardly any residents. This left her with a chilling question. Who was that old man, and why did he intentionally point her down the wrong path? This story took place many years ago, during the graduation season when Phoenix flowers bloomed. After the university entrance exams ended, everyone was cherishing their last moments together at school, but Ah Chong was absent. That day was Ah Chong's 18th birthday, and he had taken leave in advance to take his motorcycle driving test. For many high school students in Taiwan, getting a motorcycle license is like a coming-of-age ceremony. After school, Ah Chong rode his family's motorcycle, holding his newly acquired license, waiting for his good friend Ah Tai at the school gate. Ah Chong was the youngest in their group, so he was the last to get his license. To celebrate Ah Chong's coming of age and his successful driving test, Ah Tai gathered 13 classmates to ride to Yangmingshan to cook hot pot after school. Some rode in pairs, forming a long line as they rode. Ah Chong rode at the very end. At first, everyone rode smoothly, but after entering Yangmingshan, everyone clearly felt the temperature drop. Although it was summer, it felt as cold as winter. Ah Tai led everyone from Yongjin Highway to Balaka Highway. At this point, a strong gust of wind hit, and several people almost fell off their bikes because they couldn't hold onto the handlebars. So everyone stopped at the roadside to rest. Ah Chong suddenly asked, "Who just called my name?" The others looked at each other, saying, "No one, you must have misheard." Ah Chong didn't think much of it, and they continued their journey. They arrived at a pavilion on Balaka Highway. To reach this pavilion, they first had to walk up a flight of stairs. Everyone parked their motorcycles by the road, carried their pots and gas stoves up to the pavilion, and started cooking hot pot. After riding for so long, they were finally happy eating the warm hot pot and chatting. Only Ah Chong sat alone in a corner, not saying a word. As it got later, Atai suddenly suggested that everyone tell a ghost story. Perhaps wanting to scare the female classmates, the other boys chimed in and began to take turns telling ghost stories. After everyone had taken their turn, Tai realized, where's Achong? At that moment, Achong's voice came from the corner of the pavilion. He raised his head and began to speak. One day, a group of people rode their motorcycles to Yangmingshan, just like us now, eating hot pot in this pavilion. That day, Yangmingshan was covered in fog, just like today. The person riding at the very back suddenly heard someone calling him from behind. So he turned his head to look, but there was no one behind him. At that moment, a sharp burst of laughter suddenly came from his empty back seat. He glanced in his rearview mirror and saw a long-haired woman sitting in his back seat. Her long hair covered most of her face, but couldn't hide her ferocious smile, which scared the person into hitting the guardrail by the road and finally falling down the valley. But his other friends had already gone far ahead and didn't notice at all. Achong then asked with a creepy smile, "Do you think this was an accident, or was it caused by that thing?" Everyone felt goosebumps. "All right, it's getting late. Let's pack up and get ready to go home," Atai said, trying to lighten the mood. Everyone quickly packed up and walked to the parking area, only to find that Achong was gone. Everyone found it unbelievable. They had just seen him at the pavilion. How could a person just disappear like that? But no matter how much they searched, they couldn't find Achong. Did he go back by himself? How disloyal, not even saying goodbye before leaving, Atai complained in his heart. So everyone started their motorcycles and rode back the way they came. When they reached a large bend, Atai suddenly braked hard. The others were startled and almost crashed into him. Atai saw Achong's motorcycle crash by the roadside, its shattered parts scattered everywhere. It's Achong. Achong had an accident, but they only saw the motorcycle, not Achong himself. Everyone panicked and quickly called the police. Police and paramedics soon arrived at the scene. They finally found Achong in the bushes below the guardrail, but he showed no signs of life. What was meant to be a celebration for Achong had ended in such a tragedy. The paramedics told Atai and the others that there were no traces of other vehicles at the scene, indicating it was likely a self-inflicted crash by the rider. The accident happened a while ago. The driver suffered severe head trauma and unfortunately passed away. He just left us a moment ago. The accident should have just happened recently. Please try to rescue him. Unexpectedly, the paramedic said, based on a preliminary assessment of the body, the time of death had already exceeded 5 hours. We are very sorry. We can't do anything. After hearing this, everyone was terrified. 5 hours. 5 hours ago was when we first went up the mountain, wasn't it? This meant that Achong had had an accident on the way up. But he was clearly just eating hot pot with us. At this point, someone recalled that earlier, Achong's face had been pale, and he had sat alone in the corner, not saying a word, plus the strange story he told. Could it be that the Achong at the pavilion earlier was his spirit? My father and a friend decided to take a trip to the east coast of Taiwan. Since there was no satellite navigation back then, my father, unfamiliar with the roads, simply followed his friend's car. Our two families, in two separate cars, set off from Taipei, heading towards Yilan. It was around 7 p.m. when we got onto the North Link Highway 1, a winding, 58-kilometer cross-mountain road known for its treacherous terrain and sharp hairpin turns in the Yilan section. As we drove, the road grew darker and more isolated. Soon, the only thing my father could see was the faint glow of our friend's taillights ahead of us. My mother, who was prone to car sickness, had taken medicine and was fast asleep in the passenger seat. As we navigated the notorious 9 turns and 18 bends, we passed a particularly sharp curve. Suddenly, my father spotted a woman standing on the side of the road, frantically waving. He pulled over, rolled down the window, and asked, "Excuse me, do you need any help?" From the back seat, I remember studying the woman's face. It was deathly pale and seemed to emit a faint, sickly green light. Despite it being a warm summer night, a bone-chilling wind blew into the car. The woman, speaking in a low, hollow voice, said, "We need to go to Touching. Can you give us a ride?" My father asked, confused. "Aren't you alone?" The woman simply pointed toward the mountain wall. I also have 2 children there. I looked in the direction she was pointing and saw 2 small children, their faces also glowing with that strange pale green light. It was baffling. I had scanned the area when we stopped and hadn't seen anyone. My father, however, seemed to miss the strangeness of the situation. He wanted to help, but with 3 of us already in the car, there was no way we could fit 3 more. "I'm sorry," he said to the woman. "My car is full, but I can call the police to help you." As he reached for his phone, another car approached from the opposite direction, honking its horn. It was our friend, who had turned back after realizing we were no longer following him. Our friend got out of his car, walked over, and asked, "Why are you stopped here?" My father explained. There was a woman who said she wanted to get a ride to touching with her children. He pointed toward the spot where the woman had been standing, but she had vanished without a trace. "I didn't see anyone at all," his friend said, his voice laced with confusion. My father, now feeling a growing unease, turned on his high beams and shined them on the mountain wall. There were no people there, only a black flag tied to a bamboo stick, a white bag, and the ground was littered with paper money. My father and his friend exchanged a terrified glance. We all scrambled back into our cars, rolled up the windows, and sped away without looking back. The rest of the drive was silent. It wasn't until we had made it off the mountain and were talking with our friend that we pieced it all together. The unsettling image of the flag and paper money, the ghostly glow, and the sudden disappearance of the woman and her children. Why would a family be on such a desolate mountain road at that time of night? The answers we knew were not of this world. This is a personal experience shared by a netizen named Away, who once encountered strange events on North Link Highway one late at night. Away possessed supernatural sensitivity since childhood, often seeing semi-transparent human figures. Although he encountered these things frequently, they still filled him with great fear. However, as he grew older, the frequency of such encounters gradually decreased, and by the time he reached adulthood, he had not experienced them again until this particular night. After graduating, Away left his hometown of Hualien and went to Taipei to work independently. A few nights before he was scheduled to work abroad, Away decided to ride his beloved motorcycle, a manual transmission bike, all the way from Taipei back to Hualien, wanting to see his old home one last time before leaving the country. Away rode from the city center to Xindian, then proceeded on to North Link Highway 1. The scenery gradually transformed from towering buildings into mountain walls and river valleys. It was approximately 11 p.m., and North Link Highway 1 was almost entirely deserted, with hardly any people or vehicles. Many sections of the road had no streetlights, and only the glow of his headlights illuminated the pitch-black road ahead. Although he had previously heard various ghost stories about North Link Highway 1, he didn't dwell on them at the time, riding steadily along. He rode through numerous bends, finally passing the renowned 9 turns and 18 bends section. As he was nearing the descent, he spotted a female figure standing by the roadside, with her back facing him. Given that this section was closer to the bottom of the mountain and had some residential houses, Away initially presumed she was a local resident. However, just after he passed the woman, Away instinctively glanced at his rearview mirror. Typically, a person's image would quickly shrink and disappear from the mirror's view as one moves away. But Away saw the woman continuously in his rearview mirror, as if she were following him forward. What was even more bizarre was that the woman's back was still facing Away, yet she was moving in the same direction he was, essentially walking backward. Away's heart began to pound rapidly, and he immediately accelerated his motorcycle. Finally, after he had exited North Link Highway 1, the woman disappeared from his rearview mirror. Away pulled over and stopped at a Guanyin temple by the roadside to collect himself, trying to convince himself that he was merely tired and had imagined things. It was already past 2 a.m. At the temple, he encountered an amiable old woman. They exchanged brief greetings, and Away borrowed a lighter from her to light incense for prayer. However, after Away finished praying and turned to return the lighter, the old woman was nowhere to be seen. There was nothing in the vicinity of the temple, and she had vanished as if evaporated in just a few short minutes. Away then resumed his journey and safely reached his hometown in the early morning. Nevertheless, That night's experience, the woman walking backward and the disappearing old woman, remained deeply imprinted in his memory. He had not encountered anything quite like it since. This is a personal experience shared by a netizen named Aquan. It began during a particularly cold, tyrant cold wave that brought snow, even to lower elevations. At the time, Aquan was a university student in northern Taiwan. After eating at a small restaurant and seeing the weather forecast, he and several friends decided to go to Lala Mountain to see the snow. They planned their trip for a Friday when none of them had classes. Their group consisted of 4 vehicles, 1 car and 3 motorcycles, totaling 9 people. 5 people rode in the car, a couple shared 1 motorcycle, and Aquan and a friend named Xiao Kai each rode their own motorcycles. They set off early in the morning, ascending the mountain on Taiwan Provincial Highway 7, also known as the North-South Highway. As they climbed higher, the scenery gradually transformed into a beautiful snowy landscape. After approximately 2 hours of travel, they reached the mountaintop and had a wonderful time enjoying the snow. To ensure they descended before nightfall, they began their return journey before 3 p.m. On the way down, Aquan felt his phone ringing in his pocket and pulled over to the side of the road. It was a junior classmate calling, but due to poor mountain signal, the call was filled with static mixed with a third person's voice. Although he couldn't discern if the voice belonged to a man or woman, or what it was saying, it was clearly a distinct third voice. His friends rode past, leaving him alone on the desolate mountain road, which made him feel a bit eerie. He told his classmate he couldn't hear clearly and would call back once he was off the mountain, but before he could finish, the phone automatically hung up. Checking his phone, he saw that the signal was actually full, not unstable as he had initially thought. He didn't dare call back and just wanted to get down the mountain quickly. He resumed his ride to catch up with his friends. Suddenly, he felt a heavy sensation on his shoulder, and in his rearview mirror, he vaguely saw a woman on his backseat. He couldn't see her face, but her lower half was wearing a red skirt. He immediately looked away, thinking how unlucky he was to encounter such a thing at that moment. His mind went blank. He recalled hearing that if one encounters such things, pretending not to see them often prevents harm. So he forced himself to remain calm, acting as if he hadn't seen anything. His sole focus was to quickly catch up with his friends, while also internally grumbling about his classmates' ill-timed call. He accelerated his motorcycle almost to its maximum speed. He felt his heartbeat constantly accelerating, yet time seemed to pass very slowly, and the scenery remained unchanged. He saw no other vehicles or his friends on the road. Later, at a mountain bend, he saw a black dog by the roadside, barking frantically at him. The sight of the barking dog made him feel even more uneasy, as he wondered if it was reacting to something behind him. He sped past, narrowly avoiding hitting the dog. Finally, after a stretch of road, he saw a convenience store where his friends were waiting. He approached them, remarking on how fast they were, as he couldn't catch up. His friends responded that they had only just arrived. Aquan then asked if they had seen a black dog on the road, which had been blocking his way, and that he almost hit. However, his friends all shook their heads, stating they hadn't seen any black dog on the road. At that moment, Aquan felt an ominous premonition, but he said nothing, merely telling everyone it was getting dark and they should quickly descend the mountain. On the way back, Aquan rode at the front. A friend in the car, who had supernatural sensitivities, commented that he saw an extra person on Aquan's backseat. He asked if Xiao Shui, another friend, was riding with Aquan, then immediately corrected himself, remembering Xiao Shui was with her boyfriend. The friends in the car then fell silent, as they all knew this friend could see such things. They seemed to have a tacit agreement not to speak about it and continued rushing down the mountain. Subsequently, Aquan, still leading, suddenly noticed his friends were no longer following him. He pulled over to wait, and soon after, his friends sped past. He immediately chased after them, but they seemed not to have seen him. He honked and waved repeatedly until they finally stopped. They were quite surprised, as Aquan, who had been in front, now appeared from behind them. They claimed they hadn't seen him stop by the roadside at all, as if they had been ghost-blinded. They found it strange, as they were the only ones on the road, making it impossible to miss him. The more they thought about it, the more peculiar the situation became, and the atmosphere grew increasingly eerie. However, they had no other choice but to continue their descent. Fortunately, they encountered no further strange occurrences and made it down the mountain smoothly. They arrived at a convenience store near their university, which they affectionately called the Old Place, because a friend worked the night shift there, and they often gathered to eat and chat. Upon arrival, they finally began discussing the strange events of the day. Aquan also shared his experiences and observations. Sometime later, the friend working at the convenience store, after restocking, went outside for a cigarette. Shortly after, he immediately called Aquan out and pointed at his motorcycle. Despite the humid weather causing the entire motorcycle to be covered in dew, Aquan's back seat was completely dry, as if someone had clearly sat there. Everyone instantly got goosebumps. After this, they all agreed to meet the next morning to go to a temple to pray, then disperse to their homes. Aquan, however, was too afraid to go home. He stayed the entire night at the convenience store, accompanying his friend on his shift, waiting until dawn to join the others at the temple. After praying at the temple, he immediately felt a significant lightness in his body and a profound sense of relaxation, and the incident finally concluded. Following this experience, Aquan harbored a persistent shadow over riding motorcycles in the mountains and never dared to ride on mountain roads again. Sometime later, while chatting with other friends about this experience, Aquan recounted his story. Mid-story, one friend interjected, "Were you referring to a woman in a red skirt?" Aquan, surprised, asked, "How did you know?" The friend then explained, "Because I also encountered the same person." He recounted that when he was riding alone on the North Highway, attempting to lean into a turn, his bike suddenly felt heavier than usual, almost causing him to slip. He too discovered, through his rearview mirror, that there appeared to be a strange woman in a red skirt sitting on his back seat. This story takes place on Danjin Highway, a section of Taiwan Provincial Highway 2 that serves as a major coastal route in northern Taiwan, stretching 168 kilometers from Tamsui to Sueo. This road has been the site of numerous serious fatal accidents since its opening in 1962, including drivers losing control and crashing into dividers, or motorcyclists losing control on turns. Due to the many lives lost there over decades, Danjin Highway has been listed among Taiwan's top 10 most haunted highways. The incident involved 4 freshman university students who were not only classmates but also roommates at a university in Tamsui. One Friday, after a busy week of classes, one of the roommates, Xiao Chen, suggested they go for a night ride to the north coast. Everyone readily agreed. However, just as they were about to leave for dinner, heavy rain started pouring down, forcing them to cancel their night ride plans. That very night, another roommate, Xiao Zhang, had a strange dream. He dreamt he was riding a motorcycle on a dark and winding road. After navigating a bend, he heard a long horn blast, followed by a dazzling light, which turned out to be a bus approaching. Xiao Zhang abruptly woke up, realizing it was just a nightmare. The following night, the rain finally stopped, and Xiao Chen again proposed they go for the ride. Despite a feeling of foreboding, Xiao Zhang joined them. The 4 students set off on 2 motorcycles and rode onto Danjin Highway. As they were riding, Xiao Zhang, who was in the back seat, looked ahead and saw a winding road that looked exactly like the one from his dream the previous night. He immediately told Xiao Chen to stop. Just then, another motorcyclist, who had been riding behind them, overtook them from the opposite lane. Suddenly, a bus appeared from the opposite direction. The overtaking rider, unable to react in time, crashed directly into the bus. The impact was so severe that his helmet flew off, and the rider was crushed under the bus's wheels, losing his life instantly. His eyes remained wide open, staring blankly at the 4 students. Shocked and terrified, the 4 immediately called for help, notifying the police and an ambulance. Deeply shaken by the incident, they decided to abandon their trip and return to their dormitory early. That night, back at the dorm, Xiao Zhang couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned restlessly. We turned to face Xiao Chen's bed. He saw the bloody rider from the accident lying under Xiao Chen's bed, his eyes still eerily staring at him. Xiao Zhang screamed in terror, waking his 3 roommates. He then realized he had been having another nightmare. What was even more chilling was that the other 3 roommates had also experienced similar dreams. This incident occurred over 10 years ago on a typhoon day. The typhoon's arrival had caused various cities and counties to announce closures for work and school, and this unexpected day off sparked an idea for a trip among some young people. The group consisted of 4 people, 2 men and 2 women. Amma and his girlfriend were driving a newly bought car, with a male friend and his girlfriend in the back seat. They passed Guandu Bridge and arrived in Tamsui, preparing to head to the north coast. Along the way, they witnessed the devastating aftermath of the typhoon, but despite the somber scenery, their spirits were high. Their car gradually left the city and headed north onto Danjin Highway. Along this road, they could see waves wildly crashing against the shore, a truly spectacular sight. They chatted and laughed in the car until Amma drove them to Sanji Diving Bay Nature Park. By this time, it was already close to dusk. Amma urged everyone to quickly get out of the car to avoid missing the beautiful sunset. However, perhaps due to the typhoon, even though it was summer, the temperature outside was extremely low and strong sea winds blew intermittently. The 2 girls immediately ran back to the car for warmth. But having driven so far, Ma didn't want to turn back yet. So he and his male friend went into the park. At the entrance, they saw a couple sitting by the fence. Amma thought, "Looks like there are other crazy people like us." Amma and his friend walked down to the sandy beach. By then, the sky was very dark. Suddenly, the sound of wind chimes echoed. Amma looked towards the sound and clearly saw 2 figures in the distance walking towards the viewing platform, but they quickly disappeared. Amma didn't feel anything was amiss. He simply thought the 2 walked very fast. It was darker than usual due to the typhoon, plus the park streetlights hadn't been turned on yet. The viewing platform was completely dark. Both of them then walked towards the viewing platform. But when they reached the very end of the platform, Amma felt goosebumps all over his body. He had just seen 2 figures walk towards the viewing platform, yet there was no one at the end. This platform extended from the shore out into the sea, with no other path forward, only the ocean. Amma and his friend even thought for a moment that the 2 people might have fallen into the sea and looked around. The more they thought about it, the more eerie it became. Then they heard the wind chimes sound again from an unknown source. The 2 immediately turned and ran back to the park entrance. They saw the couple still sitting by the fence. Amma and his friend approached them and asked if anyone else had been on the beach before them. The couple replied that they hadn't seen anyone else besides Amma and his group. Amma and his friend simply nodded and returned to their car, wanting nothing more than to quickly drive away from that place. On the way back that night, it began to rain. The 2 girls in the back seat fell asleep. Amma and his friend remained silent because they had both realized that the 2 figures they saw on the viewing platform were not human. This incident occurred in an era before smartphones, when PDAs, personal digital assistants, were the most popular technological product, often used as car navigation systems. The protagonist of this story is Ming, a newly married man. One weekend afternoon, Ming took his parents and his wife and 1-year-old child on a family outing. He had booked a table at a well-known restaurant in Sanji. His mother, sitting in the back, questioned why he booked a restaurant in such a remote area. Ming explained that it was a very famous restaurant, requiring reservations a month in advance, as he set up the PDA navigation system. Their car passed through the Zhongshan Expressway, then Tamsui, and finally reached Danjin Highway. The PDA navigation system then instructed, turn right in 300 meters. Ming ignored it, as he had already checked the map beforehand. After passing another intersection, the PDA again instructed Ming to turn right. His wife asked if he knew the way, wondering why he wasn't following the navigation. Ming replied, "Trust me, sticking to the main road won't lead us astray." They drove for a while longer, and by then it was 5 p.m. Seeing that they only had half an hour left until their restaurant reservation, Ming finally gave up his stubbornness and decided, "All right, let's follow the navigation." At the next intersection, Ming turned and drove into a winding mountain road. Even though it was only a little past 5 p.m., the sky outside was almost completely dark, and there were no streetlights on this road. Ming looked at the PDA screen. The destination was only a few kilometers away, so he decided to grit his teeth and continue. The navigation again said, "Turn right." His wife, somewhat frightened, complained, "Where is there a road here?" Ming slowed down and saw a small path just wide enough for one car, flanked by bamboo groves taller than a person. Ming drove into it, but halfway through, he heard a bang. Ming said, "Oops, I wonder what I ran over." His wife urged him, "Don't worry about it, just go." Ming continued driving, but the road became increasingly remote, with no sign of a restaurant nearby. When the navigation announced, "You have reached your destination," ending voice service, everyone in the car fell silent. They were stopped in a remote area, surrounded by bamboo groves on both sides. The car's radio, due to poor reception, kept emitting static, mirroring his wife's anxious feelings. His mother told Ming, "Turn back, don't go any further." Since the road was very narrow, making it difficult to turn around, his father was about to get out and help Ming direct. However, his wife frantically stopped his father, shouting, "Don't get out of the car." Ming had to maneuver back and forth several times to turn the car around. As he drove back along the same path, he deliberately slowed down to see what he had run over earlier. When he turned on the high beams, he saw a shattered coffin in the middle of the road. Ming immediately swerved to avoid it, and the car's headlights then illuminated the side of the road. It was only then that he realized that beyond the bamboo groves was a large cemetery. Ming drove down the mountain without looking back. By then, they had missed their restaurant reservation. Ming's family casually ate at a restaurant down the mountain. When they got out of the car, Ming noticed his wife's hand was extremely cold and told her to drink some hot tea. After drinking a cup of hot tea, his wife slowly said, "When we ran over something in that small path, I saw a ball of white mist in the rearview mirror, vaguely looking like a person waving at us." Ming was terrified and covered in goosebumps, quickly changing the subject. After they returned home, their 1-year-old child had a persistent high fever, and his wife suffered from insomnia for several nights. They only gradually recovered after visiting a temple to pray. Ming never understood why the navigation system seemed to be possessed, leading him to that secluded path full of graves. In the 1980s, Taiwan was experiencing a period of rapid economic growth. As the quality of life improved, people's focus shifted beyond just work and earning money, with leisure and entertainment becoming increasingly important. This era saw the emergence of numerous theme parks across the island, serving as a testament to Taiwan's economic miracle. Among these was Catering Paradise, located in Dakin, Taiwan. Catering Paradise was founded in 1983 by Chong Chi-chung. Mr. Chong was a prominent figure in Taichung's political scene, having served as the Speaker of the Taichung City Council and even as the Mayor of Taichung at the age of 49. Beyond politics, he was also the founder of Taichung Bus, the 7th Commercial Bank, and Chiren Hospital. At the time of Catering Paradise's opening, Mr. Chong was 66 years old, and seeing a gap in the market for large-scale amusement parks outside of Asia Paradise in Taoyuan, he decided to build a modern, expansive theme park in Taichung. Spanning approximately 5 hectares, Catering Paradise featured a variety of modern attractions for its time, including spinning teacups, carousels, a Ferris wheel, and its most notable feature, a 360-degree disconnected roller coaster. This roller coaster was particularly innovative. Unlike conventional enclosed tracks, when the train reached its highest point, the track ahead would simply vanish. The train would then pause at this disconnected section for a few seconds before directly reversing. It would then pass through a 360-degree track and hurtle up an 80-degree incline to return to the starting point at incredibly high speeds. In the 1980s, such a design was a pioneering feat, with the only other similar roller coaster in Asia located at Japan's Fuji-Q Highland Amusement Park. Because of this unique attraction, for a significant period, the mountain road leading to Catering Paradise was often jammed with visitors on holidays, filled with countless happy childhood memories. However, the prosperity of Catering Paradise was short-lived, and the park ultimately announced its closure in 1994. A popular rumor surrounding its closure claimed that in the early 1990s, a proud disconnected roller coaster malfunctioned. The story goes that the train, instead of stopping at the disconnected section, derailed and plunged from a great height, instantly killing over 60 passengers on board. Following this supposed accident, crowds dispersed, leading to poor operational performance and the park's eventual bankruptcy. Despite the widespread nature of this story, it is in fact nothing more than an unfounded rumor. Local residents who had lived in the area for many years confirmed that Catering Paradise never experienced any accidents, let alone a disconnected track incident. Furthermore, the roller coaster's maximum capacity was only 30 people, making an accident involving over 60 fatalities impossible. There are also no online reports of such a major public safety incident from that era. The true reason for the park's closure was the intense competition brought about by the subsequent opening of two other large theme parks in Taichung, Dongshan Paradise and Argo Garden. This competition fragmented the visitor base, causing many amusement parks of that time, including Catering Paradise, to eventually close down. Even though the rumor was debunked, the abandoned Catering Paradise transformed into an eerie landscape. Overgrown with weeds and with its amusement rides rusted from lack of maintenance, it exuded a sinister and bizarre atmosphere. This transformation turned the former joyful playground into a holy site for supernatural enthusiasts. The park's mysterious aura was further amplified in 1998 when the nearby Dakin Scenic area became the center of numerous ghost stories, particularly those involving the girl in red dress. Because Catering Paradise was not far from Dakin Scenic area, rumors began to circulate that some people had even spotted the girl in red dress within the park itself. One female member of a Facebook group dedicated to supernatural incidents shared her own experience from middle school. She and her friends secretly snuck into Catering Paradise at night. The abandoned park was pitch black, with no lights, and the rides emerged from the overgrown weeds, creating a truly unsettling sight. After wandering around without encountering anything strange, one friend suggested they go to Fengdongshi, Wind-Moving Stone, and Dakin. At the time, the girl in red dress incident was a hot topic in the media. So they rode their bikes to Fengdongshi, found a wooden bench to rest on, and despite the darkness, the young group joked around. Because the female member was wearing a red hoodie, one friend blurted out, "You're the girl in red dress, aren't you?" Everyone laughed it off, but the female member felt uneasy. On the way home, she felt dizzy and immediately fell asleep upon arriving. The next day, her condition hadn't improved. Her mother found she had a high fever and even started vomiting. Simultaneously, the mother of the friend who made the comment called to inquire about her daughter's condition. It turned out that after returning home, that friend had been acting as if possessed, with her eyes half closed and making eerie laughs. Through other friends, the mothers learned about their night excursion to Catering Paradise in Fengdongshi. They then took the two children to a temple to seek help from a master. The master revealed that they had encountered unclean things in the mountains, which had followed them down, causing the persistent fever. As for the friend, a very powerful spiritual entity had attached itself to her. After much effort, the master managed to remove the entity, and both teenagers returned to normal, though they had no memory of the events, only learning about it from others. They were considered very lucky, as other internet users shared stories of experiencing misfortune and even a bizarre fatal car accident after exploring Catering Paradise in their youth, though a direct link could not be confirmed. Finally, in 2007, construction vehicles entered the long-abandoned Catering Paradise to begin demolition. This was partly due to soaring steel prices, which led many unscrupulous individuals to break into the park to steal scrap metal for sale. After this thorough demolition, only a giant guanine statue remained, standing solemnly on the barren land. Gradually, no one secretly snuck into Catering Paradise for exploration anymore, bringing peace back to the nearby residents. And with the demolition of Catering Paradise, the glory of that era became a distant memory for the older generation. You see, in Taiwan, when lunar 7th month arrives, most people become very cautious. It's a time when many activities are avoided, such as buying cars, moving, getting married, or even undergoing surgery. And for those who grew up in Taiwan, It's highly likely that your elders warned you against swimming in rivers or streams during this particular month. The folk belief holds that when the gates of the underworld open, vengeful spirits lurking in the water wait for people to approach, ready to drag them down. In many folk beliefs, it's thought that the souls of those who died unnaturally often carry a deep sense of resentment, making them extremely fierce and malevolent spirits. To be reborn, these souls need to find a living person to take their place, essentially becoming a substitute for their own demise. This act is commonly referred to as grabbing a substitute. Such incidents are believed to happen frequently in places where someone has died a violent or unnatural death, like road sections prone to accidents or buildings where people have committed suicide. Now, specifically, ghosts of those who died by drowning are called water ghosts. The process of drowning is often protracted and agonizing, as the victim typically experiences suffocation while still conscious. Due to the immense emotional energy generated and the dramatic changes in the spatial magnetic field during such a traumatic death, the soul of the deceased becomes trapped in a confined space, unable to move freely. The pain experienced in life is then ceaselessly replayed. To break free from this suffering and spiritual confinement, the water ghost must cause another significant alteration in the spatial magnetic field. In simpler terms, they must make another person experience the same agony. Only then can they hope to be liberated. This, my friends, is why water ghosts are considered so terrifying. They defy our conventional understanding of ghosts. While a common saying suggests, if you don't do bad things in the day, you won't fear ghosts knocking at night, water ghosts are said to target people who are entirely innocent with no past grievances. What's even more alarming is the belief that if someone tries to intervene and rescue a potential victim, they themselves might become the water ghost's next target. There are many anecdotal accounts that echo this fear. One netizen shared an experience of witnessing a woman fall into a river near a bridge. He immediately stopped his motorcycle to call for help and attempted to rescue her. As he did, he heard a resentful voice seemingly from nowhere whisper in his ear, "Don't ruin a good thing," clearly referring to the act of grabbing a substitute. Fortunately, the woman was rescued with only a fright, and the rescuer later visited a temple to resolve the potential spiritual danger. Despite the chilling encounter, he affirmed he would still rescue someone again without hesitation. Many others have reported similar unsettling experiences, being in a stream where the water was barely waist-deep and seemingly safe, yet suddenly feeling an inexplicable force pulling them down, as if something was holding onto them. Imagine a group of students cooling off by a stream on a hot summer day. One friend, who couldn't swim, was just dipping his feet by the bank. When a gust of wind blew his hat into the water, he bent down to pick it up, and suddenly a strong, relentless force began pulling him into the water. He screamed for help and was pulled out. Though his friends initially dismissed his claims as fear-induced rambling, their skepticism vanished when they saw a mysterious scratch mark on his ankle. This chilling detail left everyone feeling a shiver down their spine. Perhaps the most famous incident related to this legend occurred in 2008 in Chipon Village, Yunnan. This small village, with a population of less than 3,000, is located near the Dolyo-Dajan Canal, a vital irrigation channel. However, this canal has a long history of unfortunate events, including suicides and numerous traffic accidents on the bridges crossing it. There are even rumors of farmers who, after finishing work, simply knelt by the canal to wash their hands, only to be suddenly pulled in. In early 2008, one night, all 5 incense burners at Yitian Temple, the main temple in Chipon Village dedicated to Xian Tianshangdi, the Heavenly Emperor, simultaneously flared up. This is an extremely rare occurrence, leading villagers to believe it was a divine sign from Xian Tianshangdi. Worried about impending misfortune, the temple caretaker, following the deity's instructions, organized a large-scale road sacrifice ritual with the village chief and residents. The procession covered about 2 kilometers along the canal, from Meishin Bridge to Chishan Bridge, involving almost every man and woman in the village. This village-wide ghost exorcism operation even made national headlines. Whether by coincidence or divine intervention, after this grand ritual, the Dolyo-Dajan Canal, which previously claimed lives every year, saw a drastic reduction in accidents for over a decade. However, an inexplicable and bizarre phenomenon then began to plague the village. 5 consecutive village chiefs met with misfortune. 2 of them went bankrupt during their tenure, while 3 others suffered strokes or sudden deaths overnight. Adding to the eerie pattern, one deputy village chief, shortly after assuming the chief's position, died suddenly at home within 3 days. It seemed as if an unbreakable curse hung over Chipon village. This strange streak only ended when a later village chief moved his office to his home, allowing him to serve safely until retirement. Was it coincidence or destiny? No one truly knows. Now, while these stories are captivating, it's also important to understand the practical realities. During the hot Taiwanese summer, visiting streams and beaches is a popular way to cool off. However, Taiwan's summer climate, influenced by tropical airflows from the Pacific and its steep terrain, often brings sudden heavy afternoon downpours. These rapid weather changes significantly increase the danger of outdoor activities. Rivers and oceans are open bodies of water, unlike enclosed artificial swimming pools, and their underwater terrain is constantly changing and unpredictable. What might look like a clear and safe stream can actually hide dangerous undercurrents and whirlpools. Many people are simply unfamiliar with open water environments. Accidents often occur before they even realize they are in danger, leading to numerous drowning incidents every year. And here's where the two aspects converge. Because the lunar 7th month coincides with the peak season for summer water activities, news reports of drowning accidents during this time often fuel the chilling association with the legend of water ghosts grabbing substitutes. And so, the legend of the water ghost grabbing a substitute continues to be passed down through generations in Taiwan. It was 1995, and Lin Wei, a freshman at National Taiwan University, was thrilled to finally escape his parents' watchful eyes. He found a surprisingly cheap apartment in an older district of Taipei, a walk up on the 3rd floor of a weathered building with peeling paint and moss growing on its brick facade. The rent was a steal, even for a student budget, and while the apartment itself was small and a bit musty, it had a certain old-world charm. Lin Wei spent his first few weeks settling in, poring over textbooks by day and exploring the vibrant night markets by night. He often worked late into the night, the only sounds being the distant hum of city traffic and the occasional scooter whizzing by. But then, subtle things began to happen. At first, it was just the faint creaking of the floorboards when no one was there, or the gentle rattling of the window panes even on a windless night. Lin Wei dismissed it as an old building settling. Then, his belongings started to shift. A pen he'd left on his desk would be found on the floor. His eyeglasses, placed carefully on his bedside table, would sometimes appear on his bookshelf. He blamed his own forgetfulness and late-night study sessions. One evening, while cramming for an exam, Lin Wei felt a sudden, bone-chilling cold spot right beside him, even though the windows were closed and the fan was off. He shivered, pulling his sweater tighter, but the cold persisted, localized to that one small area. He tried to ignore it, focusing on his notes, but he couldn't shake the unnerving feeling of being watched. A few days later, while cleaning out an old closet, he found a single, faded black and white photograph tucked behind a loose floorboard. It showed a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, dressed in a traditional qipao, smiling faintly. Her eyes, even in the blurred image, seemed to possess a melancholic depth. There was no date, no name. Lin Wei felt an inexplicable pull towards it, a strange sense of familiarity, though he knew he'd never seen her before. He placed the photo on his desk, thinking it might be a former tenant's forgotten possession. That night, the occurrences intensified. He was woken by the distinct sound of someone weeping softly coming from the living room. It was a mournful, hollow sound that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. He lay frozen in bed, heart pounding, listening as the weeping slowly faded, replaced by the sound of footsteps dragging across the wooden floor, moving from the living room towards his bedroom door. The doorknob slowly, agonizingly turned. Lin Wei squeezed his eyes shut, pulling the blanket over his head, convinced he was dreaming. But the footsteps stopped right outside his door. He could feel an immense, heavy presence on the other side. Then, a single cold finger seemed to trace the outline of his face through the blanket. He gasped, tearing the blanket away, his eyes flying open. The room was empty, the door still closed. But on his desk, the faded photograph was now lying face down. He snatched up the photo, his hands trembling. He couldn't stay there another night. He packed a small bag, grabbed his keys, and bolted out of the apartment, leaving the photograph and the unexplained phenomena behind. He stayed at a friend's place for a week, too scared to return. When he finally gathered the courage to go back, the apartment felt unnervingly normal. No strange noises, no cold spots. He never touched the photograph again, leaving it where it lay. But every now and then, late at night, when the city fell quiet, Linway would swear he could hear the faint, mournful echo of weeping drifting from the empty living room, a chilling reminder of the presence that lingered in his cheap Taipei apartment. And sometimes, when he looked at the door to his bedroom, he would imagine he saw the faintest impression of a long, cold finger traced into the wood.